Hi, I'm James Vogel of the BioProcess Institute, and this is Between Two Ferrules. I'm very happy today to have a good friend of mine, Jay Harp from Into Solutions. Into Solutions is a company based in Massachusetts and serves the single-use and multi-use markets. Jay will fill us in on that when he joins us. Jay has over 20 years experience dedicated to single-use components and systems used in the biopharmaceutical industry. He is on many standards organizations. We'll talk a little bit about that. And he has experience with people management and product launches. He has a proven track record of growing small businesses up to and including acquisitions. So please welcome Jay Harp of Into Solutions. Welcome, Jay. Glad to have you here at the BioProcess Institute.
Good to see you, Jim. Always a pleasure.
Yep. So last week we were at the BPSA conference, and a lot of good things happening there. I think it was the 11th BPSA Summit that they've had there. And what were some of your key takeaways from there? What did you see or what interested you? There were some good talks and so on.
Yeah, so first off, I always like the summit. I always feel when I leave there that I learned something, which is, you know, we've been doing the standard stuff for a long time. Some are better than others, but the BPSA puts on a good event. Good mix of end users, vendors. Also, what I find really interesting is the federal and the government link. We don't often, or at least I don't often get to hear that. Some key takeaways, you know, single-use spaces moving forward.
Yep.
It sounds like, by all accounts, you know, we're over that COVID hump. We keep hearing it maybe year over year, but maybe I'm being very...
Well, the sales numbers are moving. I think, you know, there was this lull after COVID, but Eric Langer did a good job of explaining things, and they presented some of Larry West's slides from Aspen. So Bioplan and Aspen are kind of the go-to areas for that stuff. So that's good news.
It is good news. This is good news for us as a business. It's good news for us as a people, you know, getting these medicines under control.
Yep. Good. I think one of the other things that we talked about, and this might be a good segue for us, is the alphabet soup. So Melina did a talk on the BPE, Jeff Carter did ASTM, and, you know, we're involved with that and kind of some of the movements there. What's kind of your read on that, and maybe some of the things that we can do to help that in some ways?
Yeah, sure. You know, and, you know, I'll throw a tip of the cap to you, Jim. You've done a lot of yeoman work over the years trying to navigate all these organizations. The interplay between standards bodies and industry groups are pretty unique. I think the water is a little bit more clear than it has been, although there's still significant overlap between, say, the ASTM work, the ASME BPE work. Seeing the white paper organizations, the bioforums and the BPSA really generating good content and pushing that forward is really going to be the catalyst to drive these standards bodies to, you know, maybe pick up the pace a little bit if we can. But they're the ones really driving what we got going on.
I think one of my observations is that those community organizations that are making these white papers, they've slowed down in some ways, or they've kind of gotten too caught up in the rigor of approvals and trying to get maybe unanimous approval and not just, you know, we're capturing this moment in time. And I think single use has shown things have moved faster than maybe the rate that things are progressing. One thing is like the quality test matrices, where it's basically been 8 years since the last upgrade. And we heard from the people at BPSA, they want it more frequently.
Yeah, that I can absolutely, that echoed in my mind. The 8-year gap is a significant gap. I think there was a push. Every year would be great, but I think reality, you know, if we can settle in on a 2-year clip, that would be fantastic.
Yep, and I think, the other thing that you and I have talked about is historically we did our publication on the single-use letters, and we're hoping to bring back something like that that'll come, and then maybe supplement with our other series, BioProcess Bytes, to say how does one even qualify a thing of single use and get things. The quality test matrices are more or less just a list, but now which ones apply more or not, we hear that demand. I don't know that the standards committees will get there fast enough.
I think we're both probably, even if we go optimistic, I doubt that's going to happen, right? And then to that tune, right, you're taking theory and theorem and putting it into practice. That's the more important thing, is the real tangible output of what these test matrices mean. And, not all things are created equal, right? Different applications, different materials. It's important to understand what we're trying to achieve and then go to that.
Absolutely. And I do think, some people may not want to hear this, unfortunately, the engineers will have to earn their keep by actually doing the risk assessments and doing a technical assessment. It's not just checking a box.
Absolutely. One of the key things that I took away from both the ASTM and the ASME BPE meetings are the adaptation of standards that don't necessarily apply to our space, right? And that's sort of what we're saying there is doing that rigor, and we begin to understand that some of the standards that become a checkbox activity for our industry and our equipment isn't right? So it's up to us, and other bodies, regulatory bodies have told us as such, it's up to us to fix that.
Correct. One last thing on the alphabet soup and the standards is I think we do need some of the younger people to get involved. We need volunteers, and I would use this as one opportunity to say, if you're interested in this, please contact the standards bodies. We'll have a list in the video here, but ASTM, ASME are always looking for people to volunteer. You don't have to be a subject matter expert. You can be someone that just wants to learn, and we can always use people to help us write meeting minutes or review documents, which will help us get better.
I couldn't agree more. Again, going to the ASME BPE meetings, my background is more in the single-use space, but sitting in on talks, or I don't want to say lectures, by really smart people is never a bad thing. I remember somebody giving a presentation on Hastelloy. In my personal life and business life, it has no link. It was an amazing discussion, and I really felt like I learned something.
Okay, excellent, excellent. So let's shift gears to Into Solutions.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about the company and some of the things you're doing there.
Absolutely. Into Solutions is a newer company. It was started in 2021 out in the Devens, Massachusetts area with a primary focus on multi-use components and equipment, mainly hose, gasket, metal processing equipment, things of that nature. In the space that we occupy, there is a gap in that hose. The former owners of a previous business in New England started in 1974 and kind of had a really thick New England presence for.
They know the market well, I would think.
Really, really well.
Yep.
And through acquisition, some other instances, the acquiring company kind of got out of the multi-use space, which created a vacuum up here in New England. So the brothers started Into Solutions to help fill that void. Moving forward here a little bit more, we teamed up and are working closely with another newer company with older people called Carolina Components Group, or CCG, out of the Southeast. And they're doing some really innovative things with single use, and Into is acting as New England representative for that organization.
Okay, nice. So I know you showed me some, maybe you can share with us. Sure. Carolina Components has some interesting clamp valves and then connectors too, right?
Yeah, so the good thing about companies that are just starting up is you're able to navigate and do unique things.
Yep.
Officially, this is called the Sidewinder clamp. I have taken a dubbed name of the uh-oh clamp. So imagine, if you will, that you have hooked up your single-use system in place, right, and you have ends on here. we've all done this and said, uh-oh, I need a clamp here. Well, once it's in place, it's kind of hard to take it apart. Well, with this clamp, you're actually able to put a clamp on
Post setup or whatever to see what to do.
Correct.
Yeah?
So again, you know, as engineers and, you know, recovering engineers maybe, you sit there and look at it and think, oh man, I wish I would have done something like this. So pretty unique in itself.
Crimp it. It's just like a regular.
It's like a normal ratchet clamp,
Yep.
but if you can see, the teeth are significantly bigger. So if you use maybe the standard med device or the standard clamps on the market, they have that really thin tooth profile, which doesn't take much to pop it. This one's a little bit larger.
And we've done testing on those and actually see that, you know, over 50, 100 times they will wear, that they might not engage. Correct.
One other unique aspect of this clamp, you'll see that it's blue, not just for branding. It's actually made of a polyketone material, which may be a new type of material for this space. The advantage here is it's over 60% carbon footprint, a reduced carbon footprint of nearly 60% compared to PA66, which is a typical material used for non-product contact.
Wow. Okay. So a more sustainable option as well.
Correct.
Okay.
And so they make both their clamps and the polymeric clamps out of that same material. Again, taking a step forward, thinking into the future, you know, every little bit we can do in a sustainable way, you know, hopefully makes a difference.
Yeah, and we covered that at the BPSA Summit last week quite a lot.
Absolutely.
One other thing that we talked about is braided tubing, and you've had a lot of experience with this. So maybe you can share with us some of your experiences.
Sure. So you know, maybe if we go on the Wayback Machine, multi-use hose, you would have a multi-layer PTFE metal braid, you know, really robust multi-use hose.
With very high pressure ratings.
Very high pressure. A little bit down from there, we had braided silicone hose. Again, multi-use. The intention is to use the same type of metal fittings.
Metal crimp or something?
Correct. Permanently crimped down collar. Again, achieving, you know, 400 pounds or so. So not many thousand pounds, but still very high pressure. So in our single-use space, typically what we've seen is the unreinforced tubing. Right, you'll see that for pumps, you'll see that for general transfer. If pressure started to creep up a little bit, most knee-jerk reaction is to go to the braided tubing or braided hose. In a lot of instances, that's not too bad. If you look down here at, this is a 1/4-inch braided tube, you'll see that the braiding is really tight.
Yeah, probably, I don't know, 1/8 inch or less between.
Something like that.
Yep.
So the way most people make this is you extrude a core of silicone unreinforced tubing, and then there's a braiding machine. It's pretty awesome to look at. It's creating a weave, and it's just going back and forth, and you're pulling your tubing through there, and you're laying your
braiding on top of it, right?
And then you're going to extrude another piece of tubing over that.
So there's 2 silicone extrusions. So you have one, the braid goes around, and then you put that through the extruder.
Correct. And again, going back into that traditional application, you crimp it down, it keeps everything really nice and tight. If we look here at a bigger tube, the 1-inch version of the one we just saw, you see that the braid spacing starts to increase.
Yeah, maybe double of what you see here, so it's like a 1/4 inch almost or so.
Correct. And again, we'll reiterate, if you're using kind of a permanent fixed metal crimp, everything's fine. The unique thing about single use is the barb geometry and how it interacts with inside of a piece of tubing. It's typically a monobarb, meaning a single barb, and usually the peak is pretty aggressive. Versus traditional metal fittings, actually I have one here, where you see that there's So when you put this fitting into a piece of braided tubing, and it'll be very hard to see, it actually starts to retract the braiding, which is very unique. And maybe we can get some close-ups.
Yeah, we'll show a close-up in the video that will see that, so you can show that. So basically what happens is the braiding moves down when it's inside that.
And then that becomes problematic because despite they have this, nice, thick, strong braid,
It actually
it pulls out. The silicones aren't necessarily bonded together. So the problem lies when we put in a piece of braided tube into a monobar. You have the braid kind of retracting. And then using, maybe we'll call it traditional single-use retention devices, where you're crimping
a wire
down.
tie or an Oetiker style clamp.
Something like that, right? What you can see is through pressure oscillation, that braid can continue to walk back. I'm talking 40 to 60 pounds, so not necessarily even into the 100 pounds.
So like on a TFF skid or something like that.
Correct. So again, this is standard processing in our space. It's not failures all over the place.
Right.
But I would say we're at the hairy edge. So there's different techniques that we can use or maybe mimic to just make sure our employees and ourselves and the process are safer.
So Into Solutions has some solutions for people. This is one of the Into Solutions.
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Very good. I think that's great information for folks. And again, you'll have Jay's contact information at the end if you'd like more on that. Another thing I know that Into Solutions has represented is James Walker, a gasket manufacturer, and we've tested them in the BioProcess performance reports.
Correct. Into is the national distributor for James Walker gaskets. So James Walker comes from the UK, and what makes them unique is they blend their own EPDM, and it's specifically made for the biopharma industry. We have seen and experienced in our lives, either after an SIP cycle or continuous use, when we go to disassemble the clamps, and you might have that gasket stuck.
Right.
And the horrifying thing, when you grab the screwdriver and the hammer, we chisel that thing off. Obviously not good, right? So the James Walker blended EPDM gaskets are suitable for over 500 CIP cycles.
And SIP.
And SIP.
Yep.
And the way that's formulated, it doesn't take that compression set, so we don't have to worry about that intrusion either.
Okay, very good. So you can look at our BioProcess Bytes series, and we'll have a little bit about different types of gaskets and what might be some of the best practices. And James Walker is definitely an industry leader.
I would say
this,
so.
and so on. So outside of your single-use endeavors and Into Solutions, I know you have a few hobbies. So why don't you tell us a little bit about some of your, let's say, hobbies with growing some things at home and so on.
So I am a serial hobbyist. The latest one that has really got my passion going, and it ties into our science world, is I breed boa constrictors. So if anybody ever had the visions of being Dr. Frankenstein, you can sit there and manipulate length, width, pattern, color, and even temperament. So it's a hobby of mine that, we'll knock wood here, will end up being my pre-retirement endeavor.
Nice. How many have you bred so far? I mean, do you have an order of magnitude or something? Or?
I am by no means a person of note of this space, but we've had several successful litters, different sizes. I like to lean more on the pet trade versus, breeding for other breeders. My typical price range is around $500 to $2,000, but I've seen boa constrictors up to $100,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's exciting. And then you have bred some other things too. So spiders.
I have spider collection as well, and then I have I call it the baby dinosaur, but I have a black and white Argentine tegu that is pretty cool to have.
Wow. So Jay's a person of many different dimensions, and this is just one of them. And I really appreciate you coming down, sharing with us some of the things on braided tubing and single use. And we look forward for you coming back soon.
Absolutely, James. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.